I think as parents, the most important thing is we want to hand our children a better life, but we want them to earn that better life.
All right, guys, welcome back to The Six. My name is Sandy Cerami, coming to you live with my man making the magic happen behind the camera, the one and only Hollywood Capone of Capone Studios. And to my right is a gentleman I've had the great pleasure of meeting and getting to know a little bit over the course of the last couple of months. Introduced to us by mutual friends, not the least of which Mr. Tim McCarthy, Mr. John Amaratis. I have with me Mr. John Ebanietti. And John is a unique guy. He's a character with character, which I like to say. I mean, a gentleman that brings a lot more than what you see in the veneer. Has some depth to him, and I'm excited to get a chance to know him here today and get to know his story a lot better. So, John, welcome to The Six. As I do with every single guest that we have here on The Six, we talk a little bit about how you grew up and what life was like for you as a kid. I know you grew up in Rockland County, correct?
Small little sleepy town called Pearl River.
I know it well.
First Italian family, moved in there in 1969.
You were the minority.
I was the minority.
Well, the Irishman up there in Pearl River, for sure.
Indeed.
Spent many nights, I think, at a place called the Grand Saloon.
The Grand Saloon.
With the peanuts on the floor. And right
Jenny
up the street.
Ale.
Yeah, that's right. And right up the street was the High Wheeler. And a good buddy of mine, Keith Kennedy, I don't know if you know Keith Kennedy, but he owns the old Pearl River Hotel.
Okay.
And so a nod to Mr. Keith Kennedy. But what was it like growing up as the lone Italian, the token Italian in an Irish neighborhood, an enclave up in Pearl River?
You know, it was interesting being the only family really with the last name that ended in a vowel.
Yeah.
It was a good experience. Pearl was a great small community town, friendly town.
Yeah.
Everyone got along. I'm still lifelong friends with people that I went to elementary school with, high school with. Great small town, great sense of family values.
Yeah.
Great sense of community.
Yep.
It was just it was
There's a
great
fabric,
experience.
right? There's a fabric to the culture up there. There's no question.
And you know that fabric is still runs through part of my life.
Yeah.
You know, it's even though I only live 10, 15 miles away from Pearl River today, I can still go back there, and you step back in time and you feel comfortable being there.
It's amazing. Main Street hasn't changed. I know there's some storefronts have changed, but for the most part, you drive up from the bottom of Main Street to the top, and it looks the same and feels the same. Yeah, no question.
Yep.
No question. So, talk a little bit about what it was like growing up as John Ebanietti. Your parents, were they first generation here, second generation here?
My parents were second generation.
Okay.
My father's father came over from Italy, an Italian mason. Came over, he was 19. My grandmother was 17, came over with pretty much a bucket and a skill to lay brick. My mother's family was originally from Puerto Rico. My mother's father abandoned their family at a very young age, so my mom came over with her mother, her sister, and her brother, and they lived together in a 2-bedroom flat in the Bronx. Yeah. So, you know, both my parents came from rather simple beginnings, worked hard, grew up in the old American value system, put in a day's work, got a day's worth of pay, kept improving, and, you know, going back to the old American story, they wanted better for the next generation.
Yeah, no doubt. It's still alive here today, right?
It is.
I mean, we think about that for our own kids these days, and that was something that was instilled in you, I'm sure, years ago.
Yeah, and I think as parents, the most important thing is we want to hand our children a better life, but we want them to earn that better life. You know, it's just not something that should be gifted to them. It's something that they should be earned, and with that earning of a better life, again, comes a sense of value, a sense of ethics, a sense of morality. And as a parent, as I'm sure you'll agree, I think the best legacy that we leave is our children.
Oh, no question about it.
The best legacy that they leave is their children.
Do you think, you know, I know you've been very, very successful in your life. your kids have had a different front row seat growing up than you did, and you had a different front row seat than even your parents did growing up. It's harder today for the kids to understand what it takes to succeed, right? You saw the hard work, the dedication that your grandparents and your parents put in. What our kids see today is so much different than when you were growing up. Do you think that that had a lot to do with instilling a work ethic in you and an appreciation for what it takes to succeed?
I think our children, speaking to both my daughters at this point, our children see that mom and dad work. Our children see that mom and dad get up every morning, put in a full day's work. We value what we do, and for them, that's the norm.
Yeah.
Parents get up, mom and dad get up, they go to work, they put in a good day's worth of work. So for them, that's the norm. Both of my children, ever since they were aged 13 or 14, have always held some type of job.
Right.
They've always worked, not for the need for the money, but for them it was a sense of self-satisfaction.
Sure.
And I think more importantly, for them, it created a sense of independence.
Yeah.
That, okay, they're going out, they're earning a small paycheck, but it's their paycheck that they've earned. And that sort of builds up, and it continues to build and move forward.
You know, I would suspect that you yourself had to do the same thing growing up. Talk to me about the first couple of jobs you had as a kid. What kind of things were you doing?
So the first job I ever had, I was 13 years old, working off the books at a restaurant in Montvale, New Jersey called Jerry's Villa.
Okay.
I washed dishes.
Yeah.
I washed dishes on a Saturday night and Sunday night. I got paid $3 an hour. At the end of the night, Jerry, the owner, would come downstairs, hand us each an envelope with the cash for the night for washing the dishes.
Yeah.
And for me, like, listen, it wasn't a lot of money, but again, it was a sense of self-satisfaction that I went out, I did something, and I earned it.
Yep.
And it was my money.
Yeah.
It was my money.
There's something about that too. When you went out, you earned it, you own it, and it's yours to do with as you please.
And I would take that money at the end of the day, go home, had a little box, little shoe box, put the money in there, and I'd write the total. And I'd keep adding up the total. At the end of the day, you know, after 6 or 7 months, squirreled away a couple $100.
Yeah.
Bought my first bicycle with that money.
Which is big money, and now that bike is something you appreciate a little bit more than if it was purchased and handed to you, right?
And it builds a value system. It builds a sense of self-worth. It builds a sense of accomplishment, whether it's $1, $100, $1,000, or $10,000.
It's all relative.
Yep. And the more successful people that I've come across in my life are those individuals who've really not been handed anything, but they've worked.
Yeah.
You know, whether they started in the auto industry, whether they started with a farm, whether they started as individual entrepreneurs. They've been successful because they've learned the value of money early, and they've earned and they've worked for that money.
Well, I think, you know, the struggle, and we talk about that a lot on the Six, where the struggle is what builds character. It builds a sense of appreciation for what most of us in the world are going through, to try and achieve the things that we want to achieve in our lives. And it sounds to me like you grew up very much the same way that my family grew up, which was you came from nothing. My grandparents came from nothing. My grandparents were second generation here. And everything that they had to fight and scrape and scrap and put in a hard day's work in order to achieve it. Let's talk a little bit about having fun growing up. I know you were an athlete in high school, and you also were an athlete in college. I want to get to that as well. But talk a little bit about growing up. What sports did you play before high school, when you had the time?
Always ran track.
Okay.
Love to run. Started running when I was probably 10 years old. I lived in Pearl River. We used to have a swim club around the corner from us called Murray's Lake.
Okay.
It was about 1.5 miles away. And during the summertime, all the kids would meet, 6 or 7 of us would meet at someone's home in the neighborhood.
Right.
Our parents would buy us a season's pass to the swim club. Seasons past, I think it was like $20.
You couldn't get in for the day right now for $20, right?
So we would all meet at someone's home, and the big thing was who would be the first person up there. And we'd literally all line up, and we'd run walk up to the swim club. I'd always win.
Yeah.
And, that pretty much started me on that route to running. Started running competitively in middle school. And then, again, I wasn't I wasn't the most gifted athlete. There were athletes that were faster than I was. There were athletes that had better endurance than I did earlier on in my career. But I worked hard.
Okay.
I trained. I set goals. I like to win.
Right there is that is the mentality, the mindset, like where you have a desire to win and you put work ethic behind it. Everybody loves to win, right? Everybody loves to win, but the question is, are they willing to pay the price? Are they willing to put the hard work in order to win? And I love the fact that you referenced that other folks had more athletic prowess, maybe had better endurance, but you had that will to win. And that is what drives a lot of the most successful people that I've ever met in my life, is that willingness to put the time, effort, and energy in, and that desire to win. When you can couple those two things, magic happens.
Powerful.
Yeah, it is.
Extremely powerful. And that whole process, that whole experience sort of pretty much set the tone for everything else I did in my life. Whether it was athletics, whether it was, oddly enough, personal relationships. Because again, you look at a personal relationship, winning is important in a personal relationship in terms of keeping the relationship together and the success, but you have to put the work in behind it.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're sacrifice. No relationship is 100% perfect. There are ups in the road and there are downs in the road.
Right.
And the ability to address those, the ability to overcome those, leads to success in relationships. I've been married almost 30 years.
Congratulations.
Yep. Fell in love with my wife the first day I met her.
Oh, I share that with you, man. Isn't that awesome?
I was actually out on a date when I met my wife.
Come on, with somebody else?
With someone else.
Oh my God, come on, man. You got to tell that story.
So out on a date with someone else. My wife walked by. I was with a friend of mine, Tony Novello. And I turned to Tony, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. He said,
wow.
You don't even know who she is, and you're on a date with Debbie. I'm like, I'm going to marry her. He said, you're crazy. So at the end of the night, I went over to Lori. I said, hi, my name is John Ebanietti. And she said, so what?
Right, exactly. Next.
Handed her my business card, and she kind of looked at me and she said, have a good night. And I pursued.
I love it.
She gave me a mercy date, and after that was it.
That's amazing. So I share that with you. I admired my wife from a distance for years. We had a mutual friend. But I will tell you, after the first date, I came home and told my roommate at the time, my best friend in the world at that time, John, I said, I found the girl. I met the girl I'm going to marry. So you need to start looking for a roommate. And we had been living together for like 7.5 years. I said, it's going to come to an end at some point in time. And 6 months later, I proposed to my wife. I love stories like that where you knew right away. And she didn't, because I know my wife didn't.
I knew.
I've had no idea.
I knew.
But persistence, I think we share that, is our ability to stay at it, especially if something that we know is right in our heart. Because you knew in your heart right away, right? Yeah. So now you see her, you pursue, you're persistent. How long did it take for her to say I do? How long did you date her before you guys finally decide to tie the knot?
9 months.
I mean, we are kindred spirit, John.
Yep.
Kindred spirit, I love it.
Yep.
Tell me the story about courting her. Was she I'm going to say, googly-eyed over you as you were over her, but tell me about what that experience was like for that 9 months.
From my perspective, it was perfection.
Right.
From her perspective, it was annoying.
Mary, I hope that wasn't the case, but you never know. I'm sure I drove you nuts too.
But it was, I think probably after our second or third date, she realized that there was a connection.
There was something deeper than just the guy that she saw.
And she said, it was interesting, when we got to that moment where she kind of realized, maybe I was the guy, she said something very interesting, and she still says this today. She said, the reason I fell in love with you was you made me feel safe.
Wow. Okay.
When I'm with you, I feel safe.
I love it.
When I'm with you, if something goes wrong, I know you're going to push me into a safety zone.
Right.
If something were to adversely affect us, I know you would jump in and do everything you can to make it correct.
That's powerful stuff. That's a belief in you.
Yeah, and she says that today. Yeah. And my daughters say the same thing. They say, Dad, they call me the fixer.
The fixer. Yeah.
They're like, Dad, you take care of everything. You make everything okay, and you make us feel safe.
Right.
What I find interesting is that my older daughter now has been dating a fellow for 5 or 6 years. And, she has conversations with Lori that she doesn't have with me.
Of course.
And she'll tell Lori, what I love about Luke is I see a lot of similarities in Luke that you see in Dad.
Right.
And that he makes me feel safe and he makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And for me, making someone feel safe, making someone feel comfortable, especially my wife and my children, is probably the best feeling.
It's the mission for you each and every day,
yes.
right? It's the mission. There's no doubt about it. We talked recently on another episode of The Six. We talked about my own story where my wife's belief in me, I had to borrow. I'd gone through some tough times, and I was feeling down on myself. I didn't have a good self perspective at that point in time, and I had to borrow my wife's belief in me. And I think that there's something invaluable. And you talked about it in the terms of a winning relationship, and I love that because I'm going to steal that from you now. I'll give you credit the first 2 or 3 times I use it. After that, I own it. But I love the term winning relationship because at the end of the day, it implies the fact that everybody has to be a part of it, all right? And it's universal as opposed to just one person walking away with all the winnings, if you will. And your wife and your children come away with everything that they seek out of this relationship with you. Does that make sense? Yeah. Let's talk a little bit back. Let's regress or digress for a second. Go back to sports. In high school, you ran track. Talk to me a little bit about what your high school career was track-wise. Ups and downs?
Ups and downs.
Okay.
And I love the ups and downs. The ups and downs, whether it's in sports, relationships, business, personal life, friends, the ups and downs make us stronger.
Yeah, no question. Did you feel as though the competition that you experienced in your high school career in sports and again in college, was that a good prep for you for life?
And listen, there were days where I had bad races. There were days where I knew my performance not only let me down, but let my teammates down. And, I walked away carrying that very heavy burden. And, it was odd. So at a young age, at that point I was 13, 14, 15 years old, I could have perseverated with it. But I kind of took time to sort of reflect on it a bit and say, okay, fine. It's done. It's happened. What did I do wrong? How can I improve?
Yeah, learn from it.
And learn from it. So that was a very important time, I think, in the early onset of my life and also in sports.
Who was the biggest influence on you back then?
Sports-wise, hands down, no question about it, my coach Tom Doherty.
Okay.
Just an amazing human being, a great motivator. Put you in a position where you wanted to succeed.
Right.
You wanted
Great coaches do that for us, right? They make us want to perform at a higher level for them.
My greatest Tom Doherty story of all time was it was my senior year, we had the county championships, and it was indoors, and I was supposed to run 2 races that night, the 600-yard run and the 1,000-yard run. I won the first race, and I barely won the second race. So I gave him everything that he needed. It was indoors at RCC, came down to the final race of the night. It was the mile relay. One of our runners was sick. Wasn't going to be able to run the final leg. So I was at the far end of RCC. It's about 15 minutes before the race. And I see Tom Doherty walking across the field house. And it's indoors, but he still has this big Parker on that says "Per over track." And he had this raspy voice that he talked in like this. So I'm sitting down, I see him walking over towards me, and I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. I think I know where this is going to go.
You're anticipating he's going to ask you to run the last leg of the race?
I'm anticipating what's going on. So he comes over, he goes, Eb, how you feeling? I'm like, I'm doing okay, Coach. He goes, Eb, great job out there tonight. Couldn't ask you to do anything more. Gave me 2 great races, 12 points. Eb, you're a great guy. I'm like, thanks, Coach. He goes, Eb, got to ask you to reach into the bank one more time. I'm like, what do you need me to do, Coach? He goes, I need you to run the anchor leg of the mile relay.
The anchor leg, nonetheless, right? I mean, like,
Coach, I goes, Eb, listen, you're the toughest guinea I know. Can you imagine a coach saying that today?
Doherty, the Irish coach in Pearl River. What a shock, right?
So I kind of looked up at him for a moment. He goes, you're going to come through for me, right? I was like, all right. The point was this. His whole belief system that after me running the 2 races that I ran, I was definitely exhausted. Coming over to me and having enough faith and confidence in me to say, hey, listen, I need you one more time. But his whole thing with, and I still tell this story today, when he says, you're the toughest guinea I know. Right. If a coach would have said that today,
forget it.
He would have been fired.
Forget it, no doubt.
But then it was a sense of honor. It was a sense of, hey, listen, man.
It's how 2 people would talk back then, for God's sakes. No doubt.
So I went out. I got the baton. 3 people behind. We won.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Wow. See, I love the opportunity on the big stage, right? When somebody says, hey, I believe in you. Like, those words are so magic, especially if it's somebody that you respect and somebody that you want to win for. And you hear those words, the toughest one I know, toughest guinea I know. I mean, you hear those words, that's inspirational. That touches something inside of you. And I love stories like that because every one of us has those opportunities to perform on a big stage. And you talk about, from a coaching perspective, how smart that was of him.
Oh, yeah. It's brilliant. The greatest motivator when it came down to athletics. And his record at Pearl River High School in terms of county championships, state championships, divisional championships, I mean, it's unmatched in New York State history. But again, he was dealing with probably not the greatest pool of athletic talent, but he knew how to get individuals motivated and bring out the best in people.
Tough kids, though. Like Rockland County kids, even today, Rockland County kids, a different breed, tough.
Yeah.
Tough kids. I know a bunch of them. My buddy Tim McCarthy, another Rockland County guy, for sure. Another Pearl River guy, right? So, I mean, just a little bit different breed. Talk to me about stepping up to college. I mean, did you have aspirations as a high school athlete to be an athlete in college?
Not necessarily an end goal, but it almost became the natural progression.
Okay.
Because it was, at that point, it was in my DNA. It was part of everything that I did. And again, same situation. I went to Boston College.
Great school.
Great school. We competed in the Big East. Again, same stage, same situation. Walking to college, not the fastest, not the quickest. There you're competing with the best talent from all over the country.
Absolutely.
But, again, hard work, discipline, dealing with failure, overcoming failure, and, again, just staying motivated, working on the win.
Yeah, listen, I mean, Big East, no joke. Yeah. I mean, a big-time conference. Who was your college coach?
I had 2 of them, but I guess my individual coach up there, Tommy Morrison.
Okay.
So he would handle the middle distance.
Not the boxer.
No. No.
Yeah. How about a life lesson from your college experience? Talk to me about the experience. All 4 years you ran track for BC. Mm-hmm. Toughest moment?
Every moment was tough.
Any moment where you felt like it wasn't worth it? I'm going to give up. Too much work.
No. I think the adversity sort of pushed me to the next level in terms of wanting to succeed. Failure was never an option.
Right.
Quitting was never an option.
I like that. See, that's so appropriately put. I'm glad you made the distinction between the two, because most folks out there fear failure, right? And failure is inevitable for each and every one of us at some point in time, at some level. But quitting is where people get caught, right? Or never getting started in the first place. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that you're the kind of person that was self-aware enough to know you didn't have the speed or the endurance that every other athlete had out there, but you were willing to take all the tools that you had and make it work for you. You know, in spite of whatever challenges you had, you still went out and you put the effort forth. That goes back to what you were talking about when we first sat down, which was the work ethic that your grandparents and your parents instilled in you, right? I mean, you draw upon that for the rest of your life. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with your success in college. How about your greatest moment in college running track?
Sophomore year, Harvard relays, anchor leg on the 2-mile relay.
Okay.
Same situation, we'd be behind. Never ran the anchor leg, would always run the lead-off leg. Coach swapped the positions that day.
Why?
I don't know why.
Interesting.
I don't
Because it's like
know
changing the batting order in baseball.
Yeah.
You know, where you think you're looking to catch a little lightning in a bottle, where you flip-flop, your lead-off guy with your anchor leg guy.
Don't the lead-off leg is completely different than the anchor leg.
No question.
It's a completely different leg. Don't know why he did it. We're in 4th place. We're probably 3 seconds off the lead, and we ended up coming in first. I think it was like by 1/16 of a second.
Wow. That's running through the tape.
Yep.
Right, running through the tape. Such a critical aspect of track and field in races, to run the race all the way through the tape, but a great metaphor for life, beyond the track.
I always say you have to run the race beyond the tape.
Yeah, no question. You got to break it.
Everyone can run to the tape. It's the guy that's willing to run 3 steps beyond the tape. Mm-hmm. That's going to end up winning every race.
Talk to me about your mindset, because I know you're thinking as you're running, right? I mean, the mind is always going. As you're running the anchor leg of that race, knowing that you're coming from 4th place, 3 seconds behind, what's going through your mind as you're coming through the home stretch and approaching the finish line? Because I'm assuming you're neck and neck.
It's you go off into this zone, and your body takes over your mind.
Right.
So I've never gotten to the place where I'm actually thinking, okay, I'm getting closer and closer and closer. My body knows what it needs to accomplish,
right,
and it overtakes my mind.
Are you in tunnel vision at that point where you're not even seeing who's on the other side? You just focused on the finish line?
Straight ahead.
I mean, that's a metaphor for accomplishing a task. Big or small, I think, is being able to maintain focus. Has that helped you in your career?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Give me an example of how that helps you in your career.
The very nature of what I do in the industry in which I operate has these extreme periods of ups and downs.
Fluctuation,
market volatility. But by keeping focused on the end goal, what's the end target? What's the end accomplishment?
Right.
What are we looking to accomplish for that individual person, that individual group? At the end of the day, takes away the cloud, the grayness, the storms of the volatility, the inconsistencies, the turmoils within the markets.
So the horizon almost becomes the tape. You're focused on the horizon.
Correct.
That becomes, the tape that you're looking to run through. It's amazing because, I always talk about with guests on the Six, what is it that you've learned throughout the course of the early parts of your life that you take with you? Once you graduate through high school, college, you get out of the adolescent phase into young adulthood. Everything you go through during those formative years, you draw upon later on in your life, right? And I'd love to hear examples of that. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. If I said to you, what was the biggest lesson you learned growing up, what would it be?
Stay true to yourself. Be honest.
Yeah. Self-awareness.
I would rather wound someone with the truth than kill them with a lie.
Oh, I love that, man. That is awesome. Listen, we'll wrap here the first segment. I want to talk a little bit about, life for you professionally because I know you've impacted a lot of lives with what you do. I want to talk a little bit about what life is like for you today. And I also want to talk about your passion project because you've got something that is really unique. And I said to you before we started rolling, I said, I've had the good fortune of sharing time with a billionaire, but I've never had the good fortune of sitting across from somebody that has done what you're about to do. And so we'll talk about that when we come back on the 6th. Once again, we're here with John Ebanietti over at Picard Grill over in Washington Township, New Jersey. We'll be back in just a second.